In this cruel world, the beasts began their merciless hunt on humans, turning the forest into a nightmare. When survival itself is stripped away, horror begins. The Bat Beastman lowered his head toward Murphy, his blurred vision hidden behind thick lenses, but his gaze sharp as a blade. He stared for what felt like an eternity, savoring the fear before striking. That single predatory look locked Murphy in place, his body frozen. The blind bat sniffed the air, relying on instinct to taste its prey. Even monsters adapt when senses fail. He leaned closer to Murphy's head, saliva glistening between fangs. At the brink of disaster, a frog smashed against the Bat Beastman's skull, a shocking interruption. Sometimes comedy saves horror. It was Qian Ge's desperate throw that bought Murphy a chance to live. Murphy snapped awake and bolted with Qian, heart hammering. Behind them, the Bat Beastman crushed the frog underfoot and charged. Murphy dragged Qian through the forest, lungs burning, chased by death itself. He couldn't shake the memory of that moment, the terror of realizing you were nothing more than food. That is psychological horror in its purest form. But Qian stumbled and fell, his body no match for Murphy's speed. Murphy turned back, realizing that alone he could never beat the bat. But together they had a chance. Horror thrives when hope feels razor thin. If only they had a car, escape might be possible. Imagine a Tesla chase scene, pure meme energy in a nightmare. The Bat Beastman prowled with sonar and scent, each step ghost-like in the forest. His pursuit was relentless, closing the gap on Murphy and Qian. Every step was measured silence. The forest itself seemed to hold its breath. Predators win by owning the silence. Suddenly he saw a figure behind a tree, the trap snapping shut. Murphy leapt from above, crashing down with desperate fury. But the bat's hand caught his throat in midair. And then the bat realized it wasn't the boy at all, but the headless corpse of another beastman. In these woods, even corpses play their part. The truth of Murphy's plan finally revealed itself in the most chilling way. Sometimes bait is bloodier than the predator. That was what Murphy had truly meant, though he never imagined how quickly it would all spiral out of control. The calm before horror always feels too short. Suddenly Qian darted out from behind. Clutching a dagger, he drove it straight into the Bat Beastman's thigh. For a heartbeat, their plan seemed flawless. The blade sank deep, blood spurting across the dirt. But the creature didn't even flinch. It was as if pain didn't exist for him. Instead, he calmly pulled the dagger free and held it before his eyes. Then, in a grotesque display, he slowly licked the blade clean of his own blood, a moment so disturbing it twisted victory into dread. Murphy's chest tightened. Something was horribly wrong. The plan had succeeded. Yet the Bat Beastman's reaction, it defied all human logic. There was no trace of pain. That alone proved an undeniable truth. This Bat Beastman wasn't a mere hybrid. He was something far darker, born of monstrosity itself. With terrifying speed, his fangs sank deep into Murphy's neck. He sucked greedily, each pull draining life away. Murphy felt his strength vanish, his body growing cold. As he hovered at death's door, half drained of blood, the Bat Beastman froze, ears twitching at a sound. He released Murphy and hurled him aside like trash. His gaze snapped toward the depths of the forest. And then, a massive figure burst out, clad in black trousers. It charged straight at him. With a blood-curdling howl, it crashed into the Bat Beastman. It was Xiao An, the boy from Beastman's World Part 2. The side story had whispered of his cursed fate. Once crippled into a vegetative husk, his desperate father had sacrificed him to the breeding farm. A ritual of despair, not salvation. A living offering. Though Xiaoan's heart had stayed innocent, the savage nature of a bear twisted his body into rage and bloodlust, a cruel reminder. Innocence means nothing once corrupted by survival. He swung his left arm and smashed the bat with a thunderous blow. The strike nearly killed the beast on the spot. He followed with a devastating right hook to the face. The bat reeled backward, mind blanked. Its body collapsed to the ground. Xiaoan raised fists like twin iron cauldrons and rained down savage punches, blow after blow, an endless storm of violence, until at last, the Bat Beastman lay dead, beaten beyond recognition. Xiaoan seized its head in one hand and slammed it against a tree trunk. The crack echoed like thunder. Its skull shattered instantly, spraying blood. When Xiaoan lifted his hand again, the bark was smeared with gore and fragments of bone. He tore open the bat's skull with brutal force, exposing the glistening brain. His jaws stretched wide. In one monstrous bite, he devoured the nutrient-rich organ, Savoring its heat, sometimes the line between survival and monstrosity is just one bite. He swallowed the organ in one horrifying gulp, as if it were a delicacy. Beside him, Jinj tried to drag the bleeding Murphy to safety, desperate to escape. But Xiaowen's monstrous gaze snapped toward them, catching every sound. He crouched low, muttering about finding more food, and crept toward them like a predator savoring the hunt. In one brutal motion, Xiaowen seized them both, treating man and sheep as nothing but spoils. He dragged them deep into the forest, declaring he would bring the meal home to share with his companions. After a long march, dawn finally broke. By the time the sun lit the sky, he arrived at the mouth of a dark cave. Jinj remained in Xiaowen's arms but calmly said, "Hey, put us down already. We are not food. Where exactly are you taking us?" Xiaowen raised a finger to his lips, warning them to stay silent. He spread his arms and released them onto the cold cave floor. "They're just shy," he whispered, "so keep your voices down." Jinj looked around, and froze bones and skulls littered the ground, a banquet of death. "What is this place?" he whispered, terror trembling in his voice. From the shadows, a pudgy claw reached forward, followed by four abominations stepping into the light. Jinji's eyes widened as he saw them clearly. The first was an otter grotesquely obese, its body warped into a bloated caricature. The second, a hunched beast with spectacles perched on its deformed face, shuffling like a twisted scholar. The third was a frog creature with sagging fat and hair dangling over a gaping mouth. And the last, a goat-headed monster with 3 horns, one sprouting a glaring eye, its mouth lined with knife-like teeth. It sniffed the air greedily and leaned close to Jinj. As it opened its maw, Jinj saw writhing parasites crawling inside. Disgusted, he staggered back, bile rising in his throat. Suddenly, a tongue lashed out and coiled tightly around his arm. He glanced again and realized with horror. The tongue wasn't from the frog, it was from the goat's mouth, dragging him closer. The beast pulled harder, its strength overwhelming. Jinj struggled, his body trembling in terror. Then another shadow moved. The hunched beast clapped his hands, and a lizard leapt forward to seize Jinj from behind. The obese otter ripped open his clothes, revealing a gory maw across his stomach. The blood-soaked jaws yawned wide, ready to bite into Jinji's head. Every creature lunged at once, the cave turning into a pit of teeth and claws. Jinj thrashed, panic exploding inside him as death closed in from all sides. The lizard held him fast, the goat's tongue dragged tighter. The otter's belly maw inches from his face. He thought this was the end, that his final breath would be swallowed in screams. And then out of the shadows a hand covered in stitches reached out. Its grotesque fingers looked like a puppet sewn by madness itself. The voice that followed was steady yet chilling. "Wait, that child is still alive." The monsters froze mid-attack, their hunger colliding with a command they couldn't ignore. In that suffocating silence, even Jinj felt the weight of authority from the stitched stranger. The one who spoke had the power to halt a massacre with nothing but words. From the shadows stepped an old cat, its stitched face carved with scars of survival. "We don't eat the living," the cat said coldly, a voice heavy with command. "Haven't I told you this countless times?" Xiaowen flinched and quickly apologized. He called out the cat's name, Mimi, the leader of this strange brood. Mimi sniffed Jinj carefully, circling him like a judge before passing sentence. His gaze roamed up and down, sharp and unnerving. Every tilt of his head carried the weight of judgment. "It seems you're a hybrid as well." Jinj froze, confused by the strange words. "Who are you people?" he demanded. "Don't worry, boy, we won't eat you," Mimi said, almost soothing. "You must be exhausted." He turned and barked, "Children, bring him a chair to sit." "Yes, our guest looks weary. Perhaps a meeting gift?" Jinj panicked, fearing a trap. He hurriedly explained everything that had happened so far. Mimi chuckled darkly. "So that's the story. Then let me introduce myself properly. My name is Mimi, and these strange children you see, they are my family. Far away, beyond these woods, there was once a breeding farm for Eastern humans. That is where we were born. But when they deemed us useless, we were discarded like garbage. Nothing but waste. We were created for one purpose: meat production. So naturally, we were destined to be processed as food. But my body was flawed, and in those flaws, they found new uses. I became an experiment, a living specimen. I watched with my own eyes as they tore my body apart piece by piece. They studied even the flow of my blood. I often asked myself, why am I still alive? Why can't I just die? Why can't I find release? when they gouged out my eyes. I cursed the stubborn spark that refused to die. Finally, I thought, death was here. Their research on me had ended. They threw me into a pile of corpses, discarded like trash. And at that moment, I wept tears of joy, believing it was over. But then, the rotten corpse beast nearby began crawling into my nose. And suddenly, I didn't want to die anymore. I realized something then. In that moment, I was free. For the first time, I could breathe as I wished. I could move my fingers without restraint. I could eat the rats around me. And I could feast on the corpses of others if I chose. That was the freedom I seized for myself, born from blood and survival. I tore apart the corpses around me and stitched their flesh onto my own body to stay alive. Through this grotesque patchwork, I endured when others perished. I even freed other beastmen. Together, we escaped that nightmare farm. We may look like monsters on the outside, but our hearts are kind and still yearn for acceptance. So please, don't be afraid of us, for we are not your enemies. Qian gazed at the disfigured face, his curiosity stronger than his fear. With innocent boldness, he tugged down its lip to take a closer look. Hey, look closely. They're actually kind of cute, aren't they? To welcome the newcomers, everyone gathered to prepare a feast. A table full of strange yet lavish food was set before them. Xiao unclasped his hands and offered a solemn prayer before the meal. For Qian, it was the first time he had ever seen food arranged so artfully. But for Xiao An, once born into nobility, such refinement was nothing new. One grotesque child opened its maw and bit straight into the wooden table. The hunchback beast barked, "Hey, stop chewing the table like an animal. We finally have guests here. Show some manners, will you? I'm sick of this nonsense." Yet even as he scolded others, his own eating was no less revolting. Grease-stripped, bones-cracked, he was no better than the rest. Their so-called feast was grotesque parody. And then, at the table jolted. With a sickening sound, its belly split open. Organs spilled out onto the floor, but no one screamed. They had grown used to such horrors. For them, it was just another mealtime inconvenience. The hunchback sneered. So whose turn is it to stuff his guts back in today? Xiaoen shrugged. Not mine. Definitely not mine. Little she strained with all his might, forcing the goat's intestines back inside its body. Blood spurted from the holes in its horns, painting the table red. The old cat turned to Qian with a piercing look. Haven't you realized yet? What I mean is, we are all hybrids, every one of us. That is why we were cast aside. Take the fat otter as an example. He looks like an otter at first glance, but from his stomach grows the maw of a hippo. In other words, a hybrid. A fusion of two or more species, stitched into one cursed life. Normally, beastmen inherit traits from just a single animal. But when genetics go wrong, some unlucky few are born carrying the features of many beasts, and those hybrids become outcasts. I escaped from that farm, a place built to dissect hybrids like me under the guise of research. Sometimes cruelty hides behind the word science. Did you escape from there too? The old cat asked. The scent on you makes it obvious. You are one of us, a hybrid. But Qian gave no answer. He simply kept eating fish, ignoring the question. His way of eating, so messy it made the old cat chuckle bitterly. Forget it then. Let's not talk about sadness today. Tonight, we feast as if tomorrow doesn't exist. Sometimes denial is the only way to keep breathing. As long as we hide here, deep in this forest, no one will care about rejects like us, forgotten by the world. After they had eaten their fill, Qian went to Murphy's bedside. He placed a piece of meat by Murphy's lips, hoping to rouse him. But Murphy remained unconscious. He could not open his mouth. Qian feared his friend would waste away without nourishment. So, with desperation, he bit into his own hand and let drops of blood fall into Murphy's mouth, a bond sealed in blood. Always hits harder than words. You need to eat something, he whispered. They told me we can live here forever. They say this place is safe. There's enough food to last forever. Fish, nuts, and even humans. So hurry up and get better. Eat more. Because a skinny Murphy doesn't look tasty at all. Dark humor masking raw fear. Several peaceful days drifted by. One night, spring rain fell quietly. By morning, cherry blossoms bloomed in full glory. Qian had never seen cherry blossoms before. He thought they were just pink leaves floating down. He chased the petals, dancing like a child, until, by the river, he spotted a familiar figure. It was Lin Yu, the deer-headed warrior he thought he'd never see again. "It's been a long time," the figure said. Jin. When it came to killing, Lin Yu was unmatched, swift, ruthless. And terrifying, this reunion wasn't a comfort, it was a storm returning. What a chilling yet fascinating ride this chapter of Beastmen's world perfectly blends horror, tragedy, and raw survival, keeping us on edge from start to finish. If you enjoyed this recap, don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives. And most importantly, please support the original author by purchasing and reading the manga. It truly deserves it. Don't go anywhere, part 3 will be dropping in just 2 days, and it's even more terrifying.